Alright, for this 5-minute mini lesson, we're going to talk about loops. And there are two loops that we're talking about. While loops and for loops. So while loops function kind of continuously. I guess they both sort of do, like increment like a certain number of times, because computers are really good at doing the same task over and over and over again. And it just kind of saves you redundancy in code. The syntax for a while loop is just while some condition, so your condition, and then you'll just kind of do stuff in the middle. And then we'll kind of just keep running through that. So we're going to go through an example real quick of a while loop. So we're going to declare some sort of number that will kind of serve as our iteration. So say that is equal to 1. And so while our number, say less than or equal to 5, and then we'll say, we'll print out number. And then we have to increment number, or we can do, you can do number plus plus or plus plus number. They both function the same way. But essentially the idea is that it'll run through this continuously until this condition is no longer true. I mean, you want to make sure you increment like kind of the condition or do something to change the condition, because otherwise it'll just kind of run infinitely, and it'll kind of never reach an end. You also want to make sure that, like, if you're like an example like this where you're like iterating like an integer value up to a certain number, that you don't declare the integer in the while loop, because otherwise it'll just keep resetting that value and it will again run infinitely. So kind of walking through this and how this works. So num equals 1, and so that's less than or equal to 5, so it'll print out 1, then it'll increment 1. So now our value for num is 2. 2, it'll go back to the conditions in the while loop to see if it's true. 2 is less than 5, so it'll print out 2, and then it'll change the value of num to 3. It'll run through again because the condition is still true. It'll increment num to 4. It'll print 4. It'll increment number to 5. 5 is equal to 5, so it'll print 5. Then it'll increment number again to 6. This condition is no longer true, and we end up here out of the while loop. So another way to do this is using like a for loop, which functions very similarly. The for loop kind of has 3 sort of clauses in it, or I guess sort of statements in it, that kind of determine the condition. So you can start by declaring your value for num inside the for loop, or inside like the parentheses of the for loop. You can check, well, num is less than or equal to 5, and then you can do plus plus num. I'm sorry, that's hard to read, but I was kind of running out of room. And then you can include the values or what you're doing in here. So doing the same thing we did the while loop, cout num line, and then you don't need to index it or increment the index at the end, because it kind of does that already here up in the for loop. So start with 1, it'll print out 1, and so we'll kind of do the same thing where we like keep track of what number equals. So number's 1, prints out 1, and then it'll go through and increment it. So it'll go through and kind of call what you have here. So now num is 2, that follows the condition, I guess using actual code syntax. 2 is less than 5, so it'll print out 2, and then it'll increment number, calling that. So now num is 3, it's less than 5, so you print 3, increment num again to 4, prints 4, because that's the condition is still true. 5, because it increments it, condition is still true, so print out 5, and then you have 6, and then this is no longer true, and it just kind of ends and leaves the for loop. So there are kind of like advantages and disadvantages to while loops and for loops. For loops are good for like incrementing like a known number of times. While loops are maybe better suited for when you don't know exactly how many times you're incrementing through it. So like for, if you know like the size of an array, you could increment that many like times into the array, that many like indexes, or increment through like every value in the array. Whereas a while loop, you can do that with like index to an array with that, but it also works well if you don't know exactly how many inputs you have. And so this is kind of just, I don't know, a quick little lesson on while loops and for loops.